Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your regular retrospective on Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective.
So we said last time?
No, almost certainly not.
Go on.
Who's that? Who's speaking? We've not been introduced, so we don't exist. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is your preemptive host.
Brian, how's it going?
Good, pretty good.
Yeah, we didn't do an episode last week, and you know what we're going to apologise about for that? Nothing. Fuck you if you think you are owed an apology for us not having released an episode last week.
You were constantly wrestling with this straw man who is like bullying us in the ether, and I respect it. It's preemptive as such as your descriptor.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot, everyone talks about how in the shower they have these arguments with these like made up people, and like, if someone challenged you on XYZ thing, you would respond with this other thing. I do that literally 24 hours a day. Yeah. Non-stop.
I do it in the shower, but I do the shadow boxing motions as well. I kind of take it to the next level. I'm doing it right now, even though no one can see me.
Is this why you're singing to My Chemical Romance?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay. I'm going through a delayed adolescence.
So, we don't have a way to like introduce us. We don't have like a Buffy on summary to kind of like to start us off. So, Bronze Banter?
Yeah, let's dive right in.
We'll do Bronze Banter
first,
and then we'll do episodes 143 to 123 in our 123 to 103 in our
definitive objective ranking.
If you're disagreeing with us, you're wrong ranking of every Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, from worst to best. So yeah, the last couple of weeks, I mean, like, to be honest, the last couple of weeks, my brain has been entirely taken up with Elden Ring. I've been loving it. It's been amazing. I think I'm about 80 hours in, which is kind of very embarrassing.
Yeah. We did talk about Elden Ring, I presume, already initially.
We did talk about it a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
But I'm in a Twilight Zone episode right now because I'm very prone to the Elden Ring from soft, cult behavior. I'm absolutely susceptible to it. Everyone in the world who plays video games is saying this is the best game they've ever played. You're spending loads of time on it. Everyone is. I have not gotten to it yet, so I feel like that one person who hasn't been turned in an episode, of Twilight Zone or something similar. So it's kind of fascinating. Or Buffy, but I don't think Buffy ever really did an episode where it was kind of that kind of Body Snatchers vibe where you think...
You watch Bothered and Bewildered?
That's actually perfect. That's probably the closest to that.
Or Angel with the, what's her name stuff? Violet, Petunia, Pegonia.
I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about.
Lavender.
You're just naming flowers,
Yeah, Jasmine.
Okay. Yes, I guess so. That's a good example. Yeah, and usually that trope has someone who you think is the one last same person you found. It turns out they're actually like, she's in here. Yeah, that kind of stuff. True. So that's where I'm at with this right
Wesley. Now. And you're. I mean, if you are anyone in the world, at any media property, you are two very specific people. You're a Wesley Wyndham Price and you're a Wesley Crusher.
I can take that.
Both little shitheads who think they save the day all the time.
And often they do.
No,
often they do.
Okay. So yeah, what we actually said we were going to talk about for Bronze Banter was on Saturday we watched Julia Dickerno's Raw
debut film Raw.
Shockingly. So we talked a couple of months ago in November, I think, about Taitan, which won the Palme d'Or last year. It is a body horror French bizarre queer car sex madness insanity thing, and this is her debut film, so the one that she did before Taitan. Raw. It is a coming of age body horror cannibalism like feminist piece.
Yeah,
it's bizarre, fascinating and wonderful. What do you think of it, Joel?
I enjoyed it. It was very different to what I expected in some ways. I think from what I knew about it, knowing that it was raw, it was about kind of eating meat and French horror and all that kind of stuff. I was expecting something maybe a bit more challenging for my stomach in some ways. Now it was upsetting and in some ways, and I do find that when you're watching horror that is not it's not in English, there's actually something quite unnerving about it, because when you watch a lot of horror in the way that we do, you get a little comfortable knowing the tropes, and you're like, oh, okay, I think I have a good sense of, well, they wouldn't show this on US TV, etc. So like I can feel maybe safer. And when you're out of that comfort zone, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen.
It's actually so funny because you haven't watched any new wave French horror movies or really like
it's a gap for me, absolutely,
or the extreme Japanese horrors, which like I would have spent a lot of my like late teenage years kind of watching. We should watch some of those, like, you know, Audition, which is fucking
this is so funny because when I went through that phase where you desensitized me to a lot of horror and ruined me emotionally, I suggested Audition a couple of times when you said it would be too intense for me.
It would have been too intense at the time.
Yeah,
you were barely handling Hannibal. But it's funny with Raw. There is traditionally one thing that I don't handle well in terms of the world of grossness and stuff. I'm not really afraid of things. In any traditional sense. It isn't like I'm often frightened or scared of things, but I don't have any traditional phobias.
You're really cool. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah, exactly. Food horror, grossness around food, I really find very difficult to handle.
It's your kryptonite, really.
I find it very, very difficult. And I've gained a new one, which is great, which is like finger
trauma.
Finger trauma, like because I've what happened in September with my finger accident. But it's very unusual because I'm not like on a like a very aware level thinking, oh, I'm going to react, or I'm scared of this, I'm anticipating this and scared it's going to happen, but I find I can't actually watch it in the moment. Like any trauma to do with fingers, and I like react like violently, like mentally, if you get me. I'm like no. It's very...
You have a trauma response. There's no laugh track to it.
And you know what? It's in fucking everything. It
like, not only was it in Raw,
constantly.
it was in Angel this week as well. It is actually, I of course, you know, as Munchausen's by proxy over here, or whatever, I am noticing kind of, it's quite a constant leitmotif. In these things. But anyway,
speaking of, there was also in Servant a couple weeks ago, which we must have mentioned in Servant and this season coming out. But season 4 out of 5, I think, of Servant, or is it 3 out of 4? I think it's 3 out of 4. Is currently airing a Servant. I think it's winding up, and it's on Apple TV, which you can get very easily for 3 months free. For some reason.
Giving away Apple 3-month trials all the time. Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, if it's not the same level as say an Evil or Yellow Jackets, but if you're not watching Servant, like, and you want to have a bit of fun with a horror TV show, this is the one.
Yeah, it has 2 or 3 core performances which are like mesmerizing to
Lauren
watch.
Ambrose is incredible, and the guy who plays Sean is very good.
Yeah, so Lauren Ambrose of 6 Feet Under fame, which is obviously
she's Claire in 6 Feet Under, a
big show in this house. And I need to learn the other actor's name in it, but she plays one of the various incarnations of the Lannister children in Game of Thrones. But she is the servant in question, kind of in this, and we talked about this before, but kind of a seemingly homeschooled kind of nanny comes to live with this brownstone Philadelphia family, and after Lauren Ambrose's character loses a child essentially, but doesn't accept it, and it kind of goes from there. But
it's M. Night Shyamalan, and he obviously doesn't feel a real pressure to like do his usual bullshittery in these pieces, like, because like, and also, like, he's kind of like, he's leaning into the camp a lot more with this TV show than he would generally with his movies. And it really works.
So that's been enjoyable. I don't think we actually, just to close off, I don't think we talked much about whether we liked Raw, but I really enjoyed watching it. Raw. So my main thing was, I thought it would be an intense watch, particularly after watching Taitan, which is a good but not a very chill film. And it was actually, Raw was weirdly like kind of fun, and it was really embedded in, like, I don't know if realistic is the word I'm looking for, but a much more recognizable actual university college student culture. In a way the films are, like, we see so much kind of like perky damn fraternity, etc. It wasn't that. It was just kind of European students at college. So it was it was actually an enjoyable watch. But it was a black comedy as well on a lot of levels, and it's like it's worth watching that for on the basis. Very interesting piece. What else have we been doing with our life and our times? We've been watching the first 2 episodes of Picard season 2, which have been delightful. It's been enjoyable so far. So like, what can you say about Picard? It's sequel to Star Trek Next Generation, or it brings back Sir Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard 20 years on, and looks at, it's kind of more of a limited series format. Looks at, it's a deep character study of Picard, his character, his flaws, his burden of command, his loneliness, etc. And Patrick Stewart is one of the great actors, one of the great Shakespearean actors of our time. So it's kind of a revelation to watch, because when TNG The Next Generation finished, it was very much like, well, he's never going to come back to this, and this is never going to happen again. And there's something really fascinating about taking characters from such an older form of television and such a very different form of television, very much of a time with Buffy in many ways, even though TNG is a little older,
same era,
but where you would have TV spots be like, next week on The Next Generation, shocking revelation, that kind of thing, and then taking it through to a prestige format. So far, it's been enjoyable. It's
my dream that if Buffy ever came back in any format, that it would go to a 22 episode season and have the bad filler episodes and have the languishing, enjoyable thing. I think Picard's doing a great job of being high budget, visually spectacular, bringing these big actors back for like much more chill shooting situations than they would have had for TNG. But I would love a traditional CBS CW style show for if Buffy came back.
I think it could absolutely support that.
It won't happen, because
but I think it could.
Because it's so much easier to greenlight an 11 episode intense mini arc of something or other,
But I would say absolutely, if you like Star Trek, there's good and bad Star Trek. This is a good one, I think. If you've never seen Star Trek before, it's actually kind of an interesting jumping on point, because it's much more modern compared to other more recent Star Trek series, which I don't think are necessarily a great introduction to the genre. Weirdly, I'm just very kind of a weird kind of an aside or a name check, just to mention that concurrently with the last couple of weeks, I finished listening to, and we already talked about other podcasts, but a Maximum Fun Network podcast called The Greatest Generation.
I think you might have mentioned this because I remember you saying about go on.
I may have done. But and if you have any awareness of podcasts and Star Trek, you probably heard of it, because it's probably the most popular Star Trek podcast in the world. But I'd never listened to it. I love Maximum Fun. I love Star Trek. And it was a review initially of, actually quite a similar format to Buffy Boys, a review of Star Trek Next Generation episode by episode. And the reason why I say it's similar, which is kind of a hubristic thing to say, but because I didn't know anything about it, and listening to the two guys review it, I found that the things they focused on, the kind of humor, the things they found funny, and the sentimentality they had for it was actually, I think, very similar to how we approach Buffy. So it was a weird parallel evolution kind of thing. But listening through all that, it was very very sentimental for me, because Star Trek was a big part of my childhood, and something which in a large ways I kind of left in my childhood, or my early teens, kind of, in terms of a real active love of it. Really rediscovered it over the last 6 months, and them finishing season 7 was like weirdly emotional for me. I was like, it was just good people doing a good thing. And
I don't understand how you managed to find emotions in 3x speed podcasts, but okay.
Well, my brain's just sparking off thoughts here and there, really fast, super fast, but I really enjoyed it. So I would recommend, if you like Star Trek Next Generation at all and enjoyed the format of Buffy Boys, then I would absolutely check out Greatest Generation. I think they're doing great work. Speaking
of season ones of things, which we weren't, but let's go ahead anyway. We are about to really go into a glut of season 1-ness in our rankings of Buffy.
Yes.
So today we're ranking episodes 123 to 103, and we're going to really enunciate these rankings. Should we jump off, Joe?
Let's hit the ground running, Brian.
Okay, so at position 123, we have The Puppet Show. This was season 1, episode 9, and Joel initially ranked it 6.5 Dancers' Hearts.
And Brian ranked it 5.8 The Greatest Love of All.
Yeah. So this is the episode where
Sid
the puppet comes. He's a demon hunter. It seems like he is hunting the school somehow, and controlling and bullying potentially a young ventriloquist. It turns out there is a alienish demon, quite an alieny demon, looking to steal the heart, brain, and
it's a collection of demons who need heart, organs from people, basically, to live.
One of the brains they get, I think it's exclusively brains, actually. Maybe
it might be brains, actually. You're right.
And one of the brains they get is cancerous. It's the guy. It's the puppeteer who has cancerous brain, and so they Yep, and Sid the puppet becomes an unlikely ally of Buffy, and he ends up dying or sacrificing himself essentially at the end. It's
And he's a puppet that's been inhabited by a hunter that's been since the 1920s, etc.
Amongst all this, they are doing a talent show, and Buffy and Xander and Willow unintentionally get roped in by Snyder into being performing a piece on it at it, and I think it's one of the only end credits of Buffy where you
play the scene,
and it's the actor is actually corpsing and stuff like that, which is quite nice.
So and we'll really kind of keep a great pace, I think, through these next few episodes, but I'd say generally this is a mix of mostly early season 1 stuff and later kind of season 6 or 7 kind of stuff where I think as a contrast, the early season 1 stuff I am very fond of, and we know this, and I will much more happily watch the Puppet Show than some of the season 7 stuff, but it is objectively poorly written and poorly produced compared to the later show. And then the later episodes are higher production value, better acted, better produced, but objectively I think boring. So I think that we kind of scattered it in that way. But yeah, so that was Puppet Show. And then next up
we have The Pack, which is season 1 episode 6. Joel initially gave it 6 floral snooker waistcoats out of 10.
And Brian gave it 6.1 Heimlich maneuvers. Yeah,
so in some ways I would nearly be tempted to swap these two, but we haven't. Because The Pack, I think, has weird... obviously The Pack is the episode where Xander and a bunch of bullies who are harassing Jonathan, I think, are get turned into, or get inhabited by the souls of hyenas on a trip to the zoo. And they end up eating Snooty, which is...
Flutie,
which is a iconic moment. There's Xander has weird rapey kind of things towards Buffy, and at the end we find out that Xander remembers everything even though he denies it.
And also the hyena stuff, I think, with the zookeeper had kind of weird cultural appropriation stuff going on as well, if I remember correctly. There was kind of tribal music, quote unquote, in the background constantly. So hilarious episode to rewatch when you watch all the show, but flimsy, and it
was part of the original the early episode emphasis on Xander. I think that really early on they thought that Xander was going to be the deuteragonist or the secondary protagonist, as in a step down from Buffy, but certainly the second, in a way that I think Willow
really became in
later seasons. And really becomes less of an emphasis on Xander as it goes on, I'd have to imagine, partially because of Nicholas Brendan's difficulties over the years.
His reliability,
But I'm not... I don't know, probably early on it's probably an emphasis there because of him being Joss Whedon's writing character, realistically. This episode's a ton of fun. The characters who are playing... The other hyena characters are stupid and funny and ridiculous, and some of them don't talk for some reason and are blonde.
They all look... I remember they all look like they're Swedish model extras. Exactly, So a funny episode, but actually I think stands up maybe the worst of the early Monster of the Week episodes. By some metrics, it's kind of, it'd be embarrassing to show people where it wouldn't be embarrassed to show people some of the other ones.
I know, I think it'd be a lot of fun though at the same time. Okay, next up we have Out of Mind, Out of Sight at number 121. This is season 1 episode 11. Joel initially ranked it 6.1 One Guns,
and Brian ranked it 6.0 Slut Friends.
So this is the episode with Marcy, played by Clea Duvall. She is a girl who has gone invisible in the school because everyone stopped paying attention to her, and the Hellmouth just made her go invisible. She is losing her mind. Not really. I mean, probably due to Hellmouth influence, and she is starting to attack people, specifically Cordelia. And she, I think this might be I think there's a
Spring Queen or May Queen or something like that.
And Buffy's also hoping to do it because she wants to, it's kind of a reflection of oh, here's the different social pressures going on here. Buffy ends up, having to take down Marcy. And Marcy then gets taken away by the feds and brought to an assassin school.
By the CIA, exactly, with other invisible kids. So I actually, funnily enough, when we were talking about the Public Show, I was picturing Cordelia on stage, because I think it shows that a lot of these early season 1 stuff uses the auditorium set a lot, because Cordelia is strapped down and is being cut up by Clea Duvall. So again, I think iconic in many ways. I think the positives are Cordelia's performance in it.
Yes, and lots of humanizing of Cordelia.
Yeah, and I think early on we're this really shows even here that Chris McCarpenter's doing a great job. I like the Clea
Duvall's good
in it, but in retrospect, it's really just her voice for a lot of it. So while I love her and I think she does well, underutilized because you want to see her acting out.
Yeah, and it's an intriguing premise, I think, and I think it's just good. You know, I mean, like, definitely not brilliant by any stretch of imagination, but good. Next up, we have Teacher's Pet, which is season 1, episode 4, and that's at position 120, I think. Let me just check. 120, yeah. So this is Joel initially ranked it 5.5 claws out of 10.
And Brian ranked it 5.4 model egg sacs.
So I mean, like, with all these, I kind of like I don't remember what our discussion level was for like why we ranked each one of these individually. I definitely think I Robot You Jane should be like below all of these, which it is. You know, it was the last one we talked about last episode. These 4, I think you could take them in any order, really.
Teacher's Pet being the giant praying mantis.
Giant praying mantis, Miss French. Genuinely funny episode, genuinely stupid. Another Xander episode where he gets falls in love with this teacher because he's a big old virgin, and and it's an odd one. There's some really humanizing moments for Buffy in it where she's talking about how she she's connecting with this biology teacher who then gets murdered for absolutely no reason, really, but because he's obviously a virgin as well, I think. Is that the implication there? I think with him?
He wasn't murdered so the teacher could replace him.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense too. But there are eggs in the biology room at the end of the episode, which never come back.
Exactly. So a couple of this might be my favorite Monster Weeks episode from season 1, the giant mantis thing, and
there's also a weird vampire with claws in the episode as well.
There is. It's like a vampire that has a claw for a hand, which I imagine is where your ranking came from, and then is scared away by the beautiful Miss French, etc. So a couple of great moments. I like the whole hunting virgins thing because you have this thing about the real jock character being like he's a virgin, and let's not mock that, but like it's good comedy at the time. It comes down because the praying mantis effects are really terrible and also hard to see because of how dark it is in season 1.
Yes,
and again, a season 1 trait of having the eggs at the end, because maybe there's a comeback and it really just doesn't,
and has no intention to.
Yeah, but I really enjoy watching it, and her head swiveling around on her neck through the wind and all that kind of stuff. That was very nostalgic for me.
Yeah. Next up, we have an episode that Next up, we have Ted. This is position 119. Season 2, episode 11. Joel initially ranked it 6.0, 9 gigabyte hard drives out of 10. And how dare you? I would never rank something claws out of 10. You ranked something claws out of 10.
Sorry, I did. My mistake. And Brian ranked it 5.3 sucking chest wounds.
Yeah, so this is the episode where Joyce falls in love with Ted, a idyllic, very 50s man who turns out to be a robot. It looks like Buffy kills him by knocking him down the stairs. There's a really weird darkness there, and we then find out that he is a serial killer, a robot who has periodically killed more and more of his wives over the years, who he's been replacing his first wife with. Yeah. And
played by John Ritter, who is one of the more famous early guest stars on the show. Is a very well-known character actor who died. What's the word you use? Prematurely.
Well, very
suddenly.
young.
Suddenly, yeah.
So this is a weird one because I think it has a lot of high-quality elements to it. Like, the writing throughout is scary and menacing and weird and fun. The premise is intriguing. There's lots of Joyce stuff. There's that weird thing that they often do, which is pitting Buffy against Willow and Xander.
Yeah.
There's Buffy showing real moral strength and not running away from having the responsibility of what she's done, which is she thinks she's killed someone and she's living with that.
It is the premier science fiction episode of the show, I think. It is the one that's most purely can we do sci-fi as well. And I think I like it.
The effects of the machine at the end of the episode, where you can see his face going away because he's a robot. Great.
I like it for a lot of reasons. I think John Ritter is great, and I think he plays this very well. I think anyone who remembers this episode where John Ritter is bullying Buffy and hiding it from Joyce, it is between the two of them, between John Ritter Ted as John Ritter as Ted and Sarah Michelle Gellar. It's great acting as Buffy. Great acting. There's a genuine sense of there's something very uncomfortable about it, which is very real.
Yeah.
And I think it actually makes you think she has killed him, because I don't watch that episode and think, it's so obvious that something supernatural is going to happen. It feels like that could be what how the show goes from here.
Yeah, and one knock I would say against it is that it is weird. Like, it has its weird, like, it kind of feels a bit like sexist in some of the ways it handles it. It feels, like, why go to like, it gets incredibly dark, and why go to these darknesses.
Yeah.
But I kind of find that, like, kind of intriguing.
It's compelling. Yeah,
it's compelling, and it makes me want to watch it again. So next up we have Pangs. This is season 4, episode 8. Joel initially, and this is position 118. Joel initially ranked it 6.5 arrows to the knee,
and Brian ranked it 5.8 patriarchs.
So Joel, what is this episode?
This is the Thanksgiving episode with the ghostly Native Americans who attack Giles' house where she's holding Thanksgiving. So this is, funnily enough,
for this episode, I would say go back and listen to our episode about it if you want us to give a full concept of it, because it's a fucking mess.
This is such an interesting episode for me to reflect on, because this is an episode that when we initially launched the podcast, and I was promoting it online, I think someone on Reddit was like, I hope you criticize this episode for this, etc. So it really sticks out in my memory. There are two halves to this episode. It is pretty funny in a lot of places.
It's well written dialogue. It's Jane Espenson.
Yeah. It is. I would have said going into the episode and years ago and not thinking critically about the other aspects. I was like, this is a fun episode I'm looking forward to. It is also
Xander gets syphilis.
It's also very well known for being incredibly racist and appropriative and culturally insensitive and
having discussion within it of like, are we doing the wrong thing here by trying to kill it? And it's like,
are the Native Americans the bad guys actually, potentially, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like at no point was a Native American person ever communicated with in the creation of this episode, I have to imagine. And it's a mess. It is.
In retrospect, when I think about it, what I think it is also part of is a trend in American television at this time of acknowledging kind of in a perfunctory or offhandedly way, Christopher Columbus was bad, we shouldn't have taken land from Native Americans, and in doing so absolving the characters of having to think any further about it, because they've met the minimum requirements of being aware that something bad happened, which I think is like a very this time I think there was a lot of that, and it really does not hold up well from that respect, but it's oil and water because the writing is good otherwise.
Yep, so it's messing that way. Next up we have First Dates at position 117. This is season 7 episode 14, and Joel initially ranked it 7.3 intricately detailed but fleeting monster
I've gone outside the bounds
monster heads out of 10.
And Brian ranked like 7.7 frisky vixens, so we went different directions there.
Joel specifically wanted this as low as it is. I think it probably deserved to be a bit higher.
So I talked about this not too long ago. I think that this is the episode. This is the episode in season 7 where Robin and Buffy go on a date, where Ashanti arrives and tries to demon kidnap
Xander, the seal
for some reason. I think this is, even though I can't rank it lower overall, I think this is such a massive clunker, because I think the Robin stuff with Buffy is actually bad, and I think this episode kills the momentum of a season which really needs momentum. And I think the whole thing with Ashanti is like a bad monster of the week. It's not interesting. It doesn't make sense. And also, I really dislike the fact, as I mentioned in my rating, that they had a pretty good monster design, but they obviously just wanted her to look like an attractive woman for most of the episode. So it's weird, and I don't like it.
It is weird. I think though there's a lot of positives to it. There's the Wood and Buffy stuff, which I actually think I found like not intriguing in terms of their relationship. I found it like interesting points. I thought the Spike content there was pretty interesting, where he was also kind of like interrupting their date, and there was like an element of like Buffy and Spike having like genuine moments there. It was quite interesting. I think Willow and Kennedy have a few moments in this episode as well, right? Am I going crazy there? I mean, it's bizarre to think though at the same time that this episode is less than 10, it's 8 episodes from the end of the show, and they're like, let's do this. Let's not, in fact. Okay, should we move on?
Lex.
Okay, so for next episode we have at position 116 Forever, which is season 5 episode 17, and Joel ranked it 6.9 Grief Hallucinations, and
Brian ranked it 6.2 Tail Plugs. So the most notable thing about the episode Forever, if you don't remember it, which I would not understand if you don't, is it's the episode that comes immediately after the boggy.
And like they obviously just like stood up to the plate and said, fuck it, like we can't even try.
So I think I remember specifically, I think this episode has the funeral.
Yep.
But I don't think it's, when we're looking back over it, there's nothing super memorable about this episode, but except
for Dawn. But this is the episode where Dawn basically gets the information from Willow about like Willow kind of like sticks a book out about like, you know, here's how to resurrect people.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And Dawn ends up trying to resurrect Joyce.
This is where quote unquote Joyce comes up and knocks on the door, is it?
Yeah, and they destroy the piece of paper before she's able to come in, and it's very upsetting.
I don't mind that as an upsetting thing. I think that works pretty okay, but I think particularly coming immediately after the body, it all felt a little bit off, or a little bit it just didn't read as realistic, or not even as realistic as the body. It just felt like a come down.
It for sure is a come down, and it's you know, it doesn't really justify its own existence. It is, I think it's a bit of a, I don't know, it's a little bit of a it's a bit of a cop out as a writer, as a writing piece. There is, like, you know, it is very upsetting to watch Buffy and Dawn crying at the end of the episode. That's why the episode isn't ranked much lower, is that there are like genuine, like, touching moments in it. Angel comes back, which is kind of cool. But like ultimately, I'm fine if this episode just disappears out into the ether.
Yeah.
The next episode we have is Harsh Light of Day. It's at position 115, and it is season 4, episode 3. Joel ranked it 6.8 absentee lead singers out of 10.
And Brian ranked it 6.5 interlocking bodies.
Yeah, so tell us about this episode, Joel.
Really hoping you wouldn't say that.
So this is the episode where Spike gets the amulet of Amara.
Yes, okay. The gem of Amara. Can't remember this now. So this is the episode which leads into the plot on Angel, where there is a gem, which means the vampires can't be killed by sunlight or staking, etc. So it is a heisty episode where he comes with Harmony. He's knocking over crypts to try and find it. I think Spike is kind of at his peak annoying in this episode, because he's not intimidating, and he's not really redeemed or likable or anything like that.
Yeah, it's the very awkward moment where he's supposed to be in season 2 and 3. He's first quite threatening and then quite pathetic, and then when he comes back in this season, you kind of feel like, oh, no one knows what to do with you, because you're definitely not scary anymore.
Yeah.
But you haven't given him any reason to be able to be integrated into the fold, which they do obviously with the chip.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. So it's at the point where he is just at the most irritating as a character, as opposed to having redeeming qualities. And then it might be the episode where, like, I think Harmony's great as a character. I enjoy her so often, but
she gets staked by Spike in this episode because she's wearing the gem, which is kind of funny.
I think this might be, and I always thought that when she took the gem off, she should have dusted them, but anyway. I think it's the point at which she is the most like maybe kind of flat as a character. So
I'd also ding at points for also having like quite a lot of content from your man, what's his name, the absolute worst person who Buffy ever sleeps with. Parker, yeah.
Well, he's the guy. Parker is the guy.
There's tons of Parker content in this episode, and I didn't like that. Okay. Next off, we have Inca Mummy Girl at position 114, I think. This is season 2, episode 4, and Joel initially ranked it 7.2 zebra striped vans out of 10. And
Brian ranked it 6.2 Inca orthodontists.
It must be because she has nice teeth, even though she's 8 million years old.
Mummy, yeah. So I think our takeaway for this episode, this is obviously the episode where a mummy is brought to Sunnydale for archaeological reasons. It revives a very attractive and compelling woman who pretends to be an exchange student, falls in love with Xander, etc. So I think, as this is a Monster of the Week episode, I think it's really up there for me in terms of Monster of the Week episode for some specific reasons. When we watched this, we thought that this actor's performance, plays Inca Mummy Girl, he probably has a name,
a little heartbreaking,
was great.
Yeah,
she did a really good job with it, and it is one of the rare examples of a character like this where at the end, even though she's compelled by her monster hug and all that, she fully sacrifices herself because she's like, it's the right thing to do. There's a whole thing about where there is a moment in it where she doesn't go, she decides to either throw herself, I don't know exactly how it resolves, but either throw herself suicide by Slayer, or allows herself to die out or whatever because she doesn't want to be feeding on Xander and has made an emotional connection, which is not a direction the Monster Weeks usually go. Usually they flame out through some kind of rage virus or something.
True that. Yeah, no, true. I think it does have weaknesses though. It's an episode where again, over too much emphasis on Xander. There's absolutely no reason for this beautiful girl who is to be interested in him. I think it's the episode where
she also sucks the life out of Jonathan a little bit. I remember we were like,
she does.
There's Danny Strong. Yeah. He's going to be a thing. Yeah.
And no, he was in season 1 as well. I think.
Well, he was, but that was the point where they're starting to build him as a recurring victim type character. Yeah. 1.
Anyway, and in this episode, you have Willow in her Inuit costume, which was very unusual, and I think. What's his name? Oz notices her in this episode as well, which is kind of interesting stuff.
Was this the episode that led to all of our discussion about using the term Eskimo on shows like this all the time? Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah. So all that's kind of odd. I do think that the stuff around her, it's kind of like the ultimate thing about her storyline is a bit of a mess, but it's also quite interesting and fun because it really does reflect Buffy's struggle in the season, where she's trying to be a normal person and she just she has a body count essentially, and it's very difficult for her. So yeah, I think it's a complicated one, but it's not brilliant, it's not awful. At position 113, we have Older and Far Away, season 6, episode 4. Joel initially ranked at 7.6 mastercrafted weapons chests,
and Brian ranked at 6.5 Justice Demons.
This episode, Dawn has a birthday party. She essentially traps everyone into staying in her house by making a wish with Halfrick, who she doesn't realize. And it's a bit of a slog. There's interesting points here. Dawn is a traumatized child who is being neglected essentially at this point. And no one really cuts her any slack for that in the episode. She
really is ignored. And now I'm like, maybe Dawn should have kicked Buffy out of the house. If you look over 3 seasons.
Yeah, this is the episode where you have one of the notable positives about the episode is at the end, Buffy decides to stay in with Dawn and to spend time with her, which in a really positive conclusion for the episode. It's weak. It's the only episode that has no Wikipedia entry, which I find very telling.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've no strong memories about this. I felt that the Halfrick stuff in the house really smacks to me of kind of there's no stakes in the episode. It's a thing I really remember about it. Yeah, because it's obviously going to get resolved. It really feels like that, and there's something about when they're all grouped together in a room and moving from room to room that feels really the blocking. There's no flow to it for me.
I agree. Next, we at 112, we have 2 to go. In fact, we have a 10 to go. But it is season 6, episode 21, and Joel initially ranked it 6.8 unnecessary Xander-based recaps out of 10.
And Brian ranked it 6.0 annoying virgins.
I must have been looking at you when I ranked it. So in this episode, we have the second part of the 3-part conclusion to the season, which is Dark Willow rising essentially after seeing Red. In this episode, we really disliked it for good reason, I think. So this is where Willow is hunting down, having killed Warren, she's hunting down Andrew and Jonathan. There is just tons of really shit special effects in the episode, which we really hated.
Out of character poor effects for where the show was at the time.
100%. It's just a poor episode overall. And there's the weird bus chase where Willow's on top of the bus. They go out to the desert. It's all just putting off the inevitable fizzling out of the season. I don't like it.
Yeah, it was really one of the premier times that we noted, these come in blocks, and sometimes the middle bit is getting from one place to the other. Yeah. And the only thing you can say about it is if you think of
they just kept moving from place to place. It was the real experience of the episode.
If you think of anything that happens with Dark Willow, you are not thinking of this travel time episode.
There's interesting elements of the episode. It's quite menacing, but yeah, it shouldn't rank more than where it is now. Next episode we have is at position 111. So, to be honest, I've ranked both of these at 112.
112 twice.
So let's just pretend this is 111. Or
112 too.
Yeah, no, 111. This is Empty Places, season 7, episode 19. Joel ranked it initially 6.9, Home Invasions.
Brian ranked it 7.4, Breakup Sex.
So this is the episode where, I mean, like, again, it's late season 7, not much is happening. They kick Buffy out of the house.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I think the tempo point where, like, why is this episode bad? Just because it's the one where they kick Buffy out of the house.
Yeah, and, like, you know, I don't think you'd need much more of a reason. They're all, like, you know, kind of like nursing their wounds, having gone to attack Caleb, and Faith takes the
Brains.
potentials out into the bronze, and that's kind of good fun.
Yeah.
And that kind of, like, you know, justifies it not being a little bit further down. I don't hate Spike and Andrew going on the road trip. But yeah, it's all, like, you know, just like.
And Sunnydale starting to empty, and as it empties, you kind of feel like, oh, this is a set. You know, there's an element of that.
Yeah. It's not justified in being where it is in the show overall. Okay, next up we have at position 110, we have Beauty and the Beasts. This is season 3, episode 4, and Joel initially ranked it 6.8 gay possums out of 10.
I must have been looking at you when I ranked that. And Brian ranked it 8.0 Kang earrings.
I must have been looking at me too. So this episode is the episode where with the rage monster, it is I can't remember how they get. I think it might be Cordelia's friends. The boy basically is abusing his girlfriend because he has become addicted to this rage potion, and it kind of is suggested throughout that it's kind of an underlying thing there. At the end of the episode, Angel comes along and kills him. I thought this episode pretty good. You didn't like it. I ranked it 8, and I probably wouldn't rank it so highly again.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't think it's bad.
I think I was down for a couple of reasons at the time. One was, as a Monster of the Week, it kind of did that thing which was most terribly exemplified by Go Fish, but kind of taking a relatively serious topic and trying to make it thematically a fantasy thing, and sometimes that can work really well, but when it does curdle the milk a little bit. So I don't think they handle some of the anger. When we say rage virus, like, he had fantasy modified anger issues, and also at the end, a feral angel who I think at this point has come back from.
He's come back in the either the previous episode or 2 episodes ago. He is from hell, and he is now wandering like craved, and he kills. He
kills him, and I think I felt it was still ambiguous whether this guy really wasn't human.
Like, certainly he wasn't, like, intentionally non-human.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he does get killed. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it has a lot of, like, thematic, interesting stuff in it. I think it's an enjoyable and worthwhile episode to look at. Anyway, at position 109, we have Sleeper, which is season 7, episode 8. Joel ranked it 7.2, Geriatric Vampires.
And Brian ranked it 7.0, One Bite Stands, which I don't think I heard at the time. It's actually quite funny.
Thanks. So this is the episode where Spike is basically being controlled by the first to lose himself and go out and suck on people and turn vampires, essentially.
And the whole thing's like, oh, Spike is still siren people. Why is that? Ooh, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a weird one. It's not hugely strong, but it's not, you know, awful. The Spike redemption stuff, like, you know, it's interesting, but it's kind of awful. The Amy Mann appearance in the bronze was really fucking weird. Like, you know, she kind of like, she's like, I hate playing Vampire Towns, and it's like, what? Just bizarre. And it's like, you know, kind of like getting some interesting stuff about, like, the first, and that's kind of compelling. But ultimately, I don't know. I don't think it's a hugely enjoyable episode, certainly.
I find a lot of this stuff with Spike in season 7 about him being triggered by the song, his mother, all that kind of stuff. It all gets really muddled for me, so I don't think there's a really clear line through it in terms of narrative. Yeah,
I'm happy to say that, like, a lot of these episodes, there's not a lot to say about it, because it's like, they're fine, they're not great, they're fine.
Yeah,
anyway,
the cardinal saying is, like, being unmemorable, I think.
Yeah.
As an episode
I think we can also say, after the, like, episode 100, like, onwards, I don't think we need to qualify things in the sense that, like, I think they're all pretty good. You know, even now I'm like, you know, these episodes are pretty okay. Like, I mean, Beauty and the Beast's pretty good. They're certainly not a bad episode. And in fact, I don't think we've been talking about a specifically bad episode, except for the season 7s and 6 stuff, which is kind of like, you know, just middling at sometimes.
I think when we get to this point in the ranking, the question is, why isn't it a stronger ranking, not why is it a poor ranking?
Yeah. Okay, next up we have Out of My Mind, which is season 5, episode 4. Joel initially ranked it 7.0 brain pennies out of 10.
And Brian ranked it 7.0 bread boxes, so the rare same ranking.
You know, actually, it happened pretty frequently, would you believe? So this is the episode where Riley is realizing that he is being, like, you know, kind of like he's like basically losing himself to the conditioning from the initiative. Is that right?
Yeah.
No. Sorry, yes, it is. Where basically in season 5, having already been done with the initiative, Riley is realizing that his body is burning out and his heart rate is like 1,000,000 miles per hour. Spike comes along and tries to get the initiative to take his thing out of his head. Is that right?
If this is the scene I'm thinking of, it's where they have a surgeon in the auditorium of the Sunnydale campus lecture room, and is like performing like surgery while Spike is alive. And remember, the surgeon does like where the brain pennies thing comes from.
That's what I was thinking as well. That's why I was like, that must be what that is. Yeah.
So the surgeon is like this weirdly brave extra who pretends to take out Spike's chip, but actually swapped it with a penny to trick him and like takes his own life into his hands for some reason. Yeah.
And then obviously they kind of fix Riley, but it's kind of part of the why the fuck are you why are you doing that? Like, why are you doing any of this with your life, Riley? You are just fucking everything up, and you're going to blame everything on Buffy, and everyone's going to blame everything on Buffy. But yeah, no, it's an okay episode, but it's not great. It's like a bad season 5 episode I find much more watchable than a bad season 6 or 7 episode.
True.
So that kind of has that going for it. Okay, next up we have Never Leave Me, which ranks at number 107. So this is season 7, episode 9, and Joel ranked it 7.2, really hard slaps in Xander's face out of 10.
And Brian Rantic 6.7, pumping him in no times.
So when we were going through these episodes last night to try to figure out where we wanted them, one of the real problems was that we had to keep going back and checking which episodes it was. It was like, oh, that's the one where this thing happens for like 5 minutes, but otherwise is surrounded by a bunch of nonsense. This is the episode where Spike and Andrew are tied up in the Summers house, and that's kind of it.
And is it that Spike is being kind of, it's unclear if he's being really chill or about to be feral?
Yeah, he keeps being triggered by the first through the singing the song, and he's like he wants to kill Andrew because Andrew can kind of like unlock a lot of the first stuff. But yeah, it's only like, it's fine.
It's a good performance from James Marsters. He is menacing.
It is definitely that, and I like Andrew. So like, I mean, content with Andrew primarily I find good old fun. Yeah, and there's also like some comedic stuff where like Willow finds Andrew and brings him back to the house, and that's all good fun. And then the Watchers do eventually get Spike, and they bring him to the seal. Like, for some bizarre reason,
the Bringers. I think you said the Watchers.
Yeah, the Bringers. The Principal Wood buries Jonathan's body in a bizarre moment that's never explained.
Never really contextualized. Yeah.
So I mean, with all that, like, it's fine. It's not great. Should we move on?
Please.
Great. And the next up, we have the Iron Team, season 4, episode 13, and this is ranked 105, I think. 106. So another season 4 episode something thing where it's like primarily initiative stuff. I always think of this episode, and Joel initially ranked at 7.4 demonic skewers out of 10,
and Brian ranked at 6.0 halters. So this is actually this is quite a memorable initiative episode for me, because this is the one where Buffy tries to go on a mission as part of the team. Maggie Walsh gives her the weird laser gun or whatever that she tries to kill Buffy with, and there's the demon that has the skewers, which are eventually used as part of Agam's arms.
And just as an episode, it's kind of like it's just with everything about the initiative, kind of like this really does exemplify a lot of it. At the same time, it's good old fun. The Maggie Walsh stuff is like stupid, and Buffy having the strength of character to be like, no, I'm not doing a military thing, thank you.
Yeah.
Imagine if she hadn't done that. Like, that would have been a very shitty show. Ultimately, it's very arc heavy, and it is for an arc that I don't feel particularly fond of, which is the initiative and Adam.
It's exactly that. Like, I think some of the initiative stuff is fun, but it did wear on repeat viewing, and for it to work, it needs you need to be really interested in seeing how the initiative stuff is going to work with Buffy, and it just isn't quite as compelling as I think they eventually realized as they thought it would be.
At rank 105 we have Get It Done, which is season 7 episode 15. Joel initially ranked at 7.0 oven mitts out of 10,
and Brian took 7.0 knocked up by some demon dusks out of 10. Is that right?
I stand by that.
What's that about? What does it mean?
This is the episode where Buffy brings Principal Wood home to the Slayers, and I'm having to read the summary for this one because I'm like, I don't remember. The Chloe kills herself, and it's very upsetting. And
something specific happens at the end of this episode, I think, though.
Yeah, I think so. Let's just find out 1 second. And we have the backstory of the Shadow Men in the episode as well.
Yeah, using the shadow casters and all that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to remember what this was. I saw some piece of Buffy merch that was published at some point, some collector's edition of something or other, and it came with the little shadow casters.
That's pretty cool.
To do the play, yeah.
So yeah, this episode is I think the Shadow Man stuff is kind of interesting, but also it's quite disturbing. But it does actually factor into a lot of my understanding of Buffy and Slayers. Yeah. So I mean, on that basis, it's quite good. The Chloe stuff is grim beyond measure.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of military stuff for the Slayers, which again, not a fan of. But I think it's an important point towards this conclusion of season 7.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was looking forward to the Shadow Men stuff because I wanted to see how all the mythos hung together in season 7. I think this is the least interesting episode for the first stuff because it's kind of very functional, but it still is interesting, and it at least gives us some good basis for this is a really foundational episode for what the actual resolution of the show is.
Absolutely. At rank 104, we have All the Way. This is season 6, episode 6. Joel initially ranked at 7.6. Great Pumpkins out of 10.
And Brian ranked at 7.0. Kiss Slugs. I'm noticing a theme in some of your rankings.
No. So this is the Halloween episode of season 6, the final Halloween episode. It's the one where Dawn goes out and kisses a vampire boy. There's the weird serial killer stuff, with the...
They go to the gingerbread house, or is it?
Yeah, they're kind of teasing it through the beginning of the episode, and it just goes nowhere because he ends up being the victim.
Old man Culturebach or something, who turns out to actually be the victim, which I actually thought was quite funny.
Yeah, Xander tells everyone that he is engaged to Anya, which if your fiance is not telling people because he's afraid, not a great sign, let's just say. And there's I think the end of the episode, I think a lot of it is about kind of exploring Dawn's vulnerability and Buffy kind of having to come to terms with the fact that she can't protect Dawn. She needs to empower her.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fine. It's funny, and there's plenty of funny Anya stuff and quite light Anya stuff.
It's definitely it's probably one of the worst Halloween episodes.
It is the worst
Halloween episode, but as we say again and again, like Dawn was a revelation for me on this watch, and I was happy to travel with her and see what she did. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, at our final one for this episode, rank 103, we have Shadow, season 5, episode 8. Joel initially ranked it 6.9 CGI Sobex. I have question mark, exclamation mark beside this.
Yeah, I know exactly what this is. So this is, I'll give you a ranking first. So you gave 7.3 Alistair Crowley Sings. Yeah. So this is a Glory episode, and it's the one where she summons a snake man monster to, I don't know, kill the Slayer or something. And that monster...
No, it's to find the key.
To find the key. And that monster is called Sobek.
Okay.
So that's what I was saying. It was 6.9 CGI Sobex.
Okay, great. Yeah. So this is the episode where... Glory summons the
snake monster.
The snake monster. I remember watching this at the time and thinking it was kind of scary and weird. We were kind of pointing out that the Glory stuff, loads of fun often can be a little drawn out, and at various points you're kind of why don't you just do something Glory?
Yeah, so there was parts of this that were very enjoyable, and the key stuff, the Glory stuff in retrospect, great plotline. But I think for me this was peak. The CGI wasn't great on the snake, particularly there's a bit, if you remembered, where Buffy is in the fucking yard of Glory's house, basically in the daylight,
destroying
wrestling with the snake.
It's at night, but yes,
I think it might be during the day, or at least I have a picture in my mind of the snake leaving during the day, maybe. But whenever it is, she's wrestling with the snake, and she is just floating, and she's it's like someone is dragging her with a cursor, over the snake,
and it goes between CGI and puppetry, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, so it was kind of as the peak of you have to hang a lot on Glory being mentally unstable to explain why she just doesn't just go straight to them and kill them. Yeah,
but there's also some quite complicated and quite sad and nuanced stuff here where Buffy is kind of they found out that Joyce does have cancer, and Buffy, when she's destroying the snake at the end and beating the absolute pulp out of it into it, maybe she's reacting to the fact that her mother is dying, essentially, and that's quite sad. Okay, great. There we go. Done. And I think it's just one more episode of 20 episodes, right? And then we're on to much shorter episodes.
And I think I can say we can definitely characterize that was taking out the filler season 7 episodes and the more amateurish season 1 episodes was really what that was about. Yeah,
I agree. Okay, should we talk about the Cordelia chase then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So episodes what this time, Joel?
So these 2 episodes of Angel, which we watched this week, were Unleashed and Hellbound. So Unleashed introduces a minor recurring character of season 5, which is a werewolf called Nina.
Yep.
Who has a relationship with Angel, and Hellbound focuses on why is Spike still bound to Wolfram and Hart, and it essentially comes down to that, amongst other things, there is a
necromancer
spirit of a 18th century serial killer called Matthias Pavane, who Wolfram and Hart used to deconsecrate the ground of the building where their offices are, and he is still in the spirit realm there, serial killering people and throwing them to hell in his place.
Yep.
So, 3 different episodes.
Yeah. And if you describe both those things to me, I would have been like, well, the second one sounds shit and the first one sounds kind of intriguing. Oh, the way around.
It's actually the way around, yeah. So, notably, so this is the first, the Unleashed with Nina and the werewolf. It's like a fine episode, but it is boring.
It's the first time since season 4, episode 19 that a werewolf appears in the Buffyverse.
So it's a reintroduction of the werewolf concept, and we've seen it all before with Oz, and it was more interesting. So it's basically her, them discovering that this woman had been bitten, trying to find her dealing with her family, potentially being a threat to her family. Kind of the motivating thing underneath it is that there is a secret society of white people, basically, who want to eat werewolves, but in the mythos of
as
a werewolves, yeah. So
what do you think that does to your belly if it turns back, if the full moon, like, I mean, does it turn back into human meat if the full moon?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think so. And they're hunting her down to Eager, essentially.
What's it do to your poop?
I'm not going to discuss that. Are you going to interrupt me again? Because I can hear you. I can hear you getting ready for it. So a couple of things with this. One is, traditionally when werewolves die in Buffy, they stay werewolves. So this is actually specifically noted that she is a different strain of werewolf. Really just to motivate the thought of this episode, but she's a different breed of werewolf. And you will notice that the werewolf in this episode looked notably different to an Oswolf. Yeah. And one of your ratings, which we went through there, it really coincidentally ties into that, because the production...
Actually, I think it might be next week we go through it. It was the
no,
wig.
I mentioned it earlier on.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, your ratings ties into it, because the production crew for this episode, or when they were designing it, said they wanted to redesign the werewolf to make them intimidating and scary, not like what Oz looked like on Buffy, because he looked like a gay possum.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
And I thought that was a wild coincidence, but also that was...
It must have been something that was in it that we referred to. It must have been...
Maybe I looked up werewolves in the episode and I said gay possum or something like that, but definitely through time and space, this has been knitting back together. So other than a couple of interesting notes there, and the fact that John Billingsley, who is a likeable main actor and a main cast member of Star Trek Enterprise, has a bit part in this, and there's a bit of like investigating Wolfram and Hart staff to see who's evil and all this kind of stuff. The actual family drama about the werewolf stuff is intensely boring and poorly acted on a lot of parts. And
there's a part at the end where he gets like werewolfed, and Angel's like, eat him instead, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, he fully just leaves behind someone who is being bitten as a werewolf. So the John Billingsley character, to be eaten a month from now, and it just totally is bizarre. And then, so that was like forgettable to a large degree, but fine, inoffensive. So actually, I would probably give that, I would probably only give that 5 failed feminist gestures, I think, for that. Next episode, Hellbound, focuses a Spike episode. It is the only episode of Buffy or Angel to have a viewer discretion warning applied to it, and it's because we see a lot of Spike being haunted by what appear to be these ghostly victims of people who have been horribly murdered. So we have a nurse with glass in her eye, we have a guy whose face has been mutilated who chops off his fingers in the basement, there's a couple of other people like that. And
quite close-up shots of those things as well.
Yes, exactly. So, and everyone's kind of like, this is supposed seemingly where he's been pulled. Every time he's been pulled back to hell, he has an opportunity to recorporealize in this episode, but he gets into a battle of wills with this serial killer ghost.
And what's her name? Fred is going to be in danger if he doesn't he chooses to recorporealize. He's going to put her in danger essentially, so he decides not to.
Gives up his chance, throws the bad guy into the corporealizator so he can be captured, and that it's essential to keep the bad guy alive, because if he dies he's just going to come back as an actual ghost essentially, so he has to be mortal. So there's actually a couple of good things about this. It's a pretty decent Spike episode. It's a very, like, Spike is very different on Angel than he is on Buffy, but you get a real sense of him being afraid of what's happening to him, and that as he is not being, no one can help him, that it is lonely, he's in danger, he's isolated, he's in different parts of the building and no one can find him. All that works pretty well. The first half of the episode with the spooks and the jump scares and the horror stuff, pretty good horror from a show that has gotten quite like PG-13 horror in many ways. Amy Acker is great throughout, and she specifically has a few scenes where they're all like, oh poor Freg, you don't realize, and she's like, what, that he's a man and he's trying to like influence me, I know, I'm smarter than all of you. So she's actually presented as doing this because doing the things for Spike because she wants to do the right thing, not because she's naive. And I actually thought that was,
and the interactions between Amy Acker and Spike, between Fred and Spike, very much an unusual combination of characters that works really well, and is really reflective of his relationship with Dawn, Joyce, Willow, where he
has respect for women like that.
Well, he has respect for women like that, but also and like sometimes it's that he doesn't find them attractive and therefore doesn't have this with them. I think in other ways it's kind of like the amount of women he's flirted with is very small. It's some vampires and Buffy. So other women he just tends to have like quite positive interactions with, and this is an example of like, you know, him having a genuine relationship with her, and them working together in a sad way. And also it makes me sad that Fred is going to be gone soon, but also thankfully it's not for, like, you know, the Fred being gone in season 5, it's not painful because it's not for, there's not a huge amount of episodes left when it happens. And I think while that's a weird storyline which we'll come to, at least it keeps Amy Acker in the show acting, you know, which is obviously not what happened with Charisma Carpenter, unfortunately. But the bum note in this episode is the back half of the episode where we actually find the villain. He is a pantomime villain, like bizarrely arch, and the makeup is awful. It's really inexplicable, so kind of hilarious, but really punctured any of the tension the first half of the episode. But that show is pretty enjoyable. Now I realise, and I know you've been very kind not to mention it, I was falling asleep for half the episode because I was very tired last night. I kept like trying to force myself awake and slipping into, like, it was actually quite thematic. I kept slipping away as I was trying to stay here. In my mind, the episode was 2 hours long. Because I really had this sense that I've been watching this for well over an hour and a half. I tried to stop the episode and like play some Elden Ring while you're sleeping, and you're like, what are you doing? And I was like, you've been asleep for 10 minutes, Joel. It was really bizarre. It kind of added to the whole experience. So pretty decent. I'd say a strong 7 failed feminist gestures. The bad parts weren't that bad really, and the good parts were strong. So yeah, an enjoyable couple of Angel episodes, and definitely ones I'm just not super familiar with. So that's been enjoyable. I'm enjoying season 5 so far overall. Me too. Okay. Like even though like, I mean, with the episode 3, which I've already forgotten the name of, just it being in the context of the Wolfram Heart office, and there being weird interactions there and like weird labs and stuff, fun. It's a fun playgroundish setting. Okay, great. I think we can leave it there. So that was a lot of fun, Brian. Thank you. We'll be back for our next episode looking at the next 20 episodes from bottom to top. I do hope that's the last 20. I think it's like 15 after that, and even that'll be different. Absolutely. Okay. So we hope you guys have enjoyed. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Tell your friends, tell the serial killer ghosts in your basement. A rare Angel segue there. And we will see you next time on Buffy Boys. On Buffy Boys. See ya.